Good evening, dear friends. This coming Sunday, we will be celebrating the solemnity of Jesus Christ, King of the universe. I'd like to give this introduction. One of the subjects that I teach is biblical archaeology. And I got this from one of my sources. This is an interesting insight that while excavating the theater in 1961, archaeologists discovered this stone, which was being used as a step in a small stairway. We're talking here about the ruins in Caesarea Maritima, and there's the theater. And so this stone was discovered. When they uncovered it, they found that it was in secondary use. Originally, it had been the dedication stone for a temple that had stood nearby. The first line of writing stone ends with the name of the temple, Tiberium, named after the Emperor Tiberius. Line 2 gives the name of the one who dedicated the temple, Pontius Pilatus. That's Pontius Pilate. The third line gives his title, Prefect of Judea. And the fourth line is readable, but probably indicated that he dedicated the temple. Since Pilate was in office from approximately AD 2636, and Jesus was crucified by Pilate around AD 30. The stone was placed around the time of, if not during, the ministry of Jesus. In this temple, people offered their allegiance to the divine Tiberius. But ironically, Pilate met the real king, did not realize it. That leads us to reflecting on the gospel for this coming gospel that has just been read to you. And this gospel is from John. And it is part of the passion narratives. And we see many things regarding it. Pilate telling Jesus, "Are you the king?" The answer of Jesus. So when we look at it, the text is a dialogue between a procurator, and we saw that was his title, as we saw from the Pilate stone that was excavated. And so he was a procurator, a governor only, and not a king. And so two figures loom in this passage, that of Jesus and that of Pilate. A governor, procurator, and then Jesus, the King of the Jews. Actually, more than that, as we would see it. And this dialogue is between a person who is in charge of a certain space on earth, and then one whose kingdom goes beyond it. And the kingdom of Jesus is not in any way under the jurisdiction of Pilate nor any king. And then the dialogue that we heard is not actually a dialogue in the real sense of the word, done in the context of an investigation, the Roman trial, as they call it. And then we go further. Jesus admits king, that is in verse 37, but he is misunderstood by Pilate. Unlike Pilate, we understand the kingship of Jesus because we are prepared to believe that his is not of this world, as he has said. Jesus came as a king to testify to the truth, to serve the truth. Of this, Pilate would be asking, what is truth? Not included in what we read in the gospel for this Sunday. But going to that question, what is truth? Truth here is the affirmation of Jesus, his own affirmation of his own identity as the one sent by God to save us. As a king, he has to speak out on behalf of his Father in heaven. And the challenge for us is listen to him. From this, we can reflect. We are able to glean a lot of. For example, the kingship of Jesus is not bound to a specific territory, people, or mindset. That is an ideology. It goes beyond all of these. And his kingship devises the powers of, and many of these, they believe their authority is absolute. Then, if we look at Jesus, we see that these are just small reigns, their powers are just small. And we, Christians, we attune to the teachings of our King, Jesus Christ. We listen to the truth about Christ. We listen to the truth that he brings about. Therefore, who's the real king? Don't associate with these quote-unquote little kings who give nothing. Our real king is Jesus. Let's look at this part, that John has his take on the kingship of Jesus. So we see the fourth gospel, and this is the context of John with this dialogue between Jesus and Pilate. So this is the textual context. John chapter 18, verses 33b, that's the second part of the verse 33, and then to 37. And so when we look at the outline of the Gospel of John, really among my favorite books in the Bible, the portrayal of Jesus here is something very personal, from the call of the disciples till the time that he resurrected and then appeared to his disciples. And so we have the famous prologue. That's the first part of John chapter 1, because there are also episodes in chapter 1 where he called his disciples. So the prologue plus these introductions. And then we have the book of signs, beginning with the wedding feast at Cana in John chapter until chapter 12. Why book of signs? Because here we see Jesus performing signs, miracles. And then the second part, book of glory, John chapter 13. From the Last Supper, that's the time when his hour had come and the hour for him to be glorified. John chapter 13 to 20. So the Last Supper, then the Passion, and then the Resurrection. Resurrection is in chapter 20. Of course, there's a chapter 21 that could be the epilogue, and they also contain the resurrection narratives. Now, within that book of glory, we find our reading. And as I said, the read Jesus before Pilate. And of course, more specifically, it's chapter verses 33b to 37. And what is the context before that? The arrest and trial before the Sanhedrin. And then after that, the crucifixion, death, and burial of Jesus. So this is a very important link between the Jewish trial and what happens to him afterwards. So this is John dealing with this episode. So we see this conversation. It happens interior. If you're into film and into screenplay, there's scenes that are outside, exterior, and then interior. The scenes that are within the building, within the house, and here inside this dialogue between Pilate and Jesus. It's a beautiful dialogue because we see how Jesus answers the questions of Pilate. See this, okay? Pilate asking the Jew, and then Jesus answers, "Do you say this on your own, or have others told you about me?" Pilate, "I'm not a Jew, am I?" Etc. But what you notice here is that this responds. If in the Gospel of Mark and also Luke, he was quiet, here he's strong. There's Pilate, and he speaks about that kingdom. You know, there's one thing that we can learn from how Jesus is portrayed by. So you see here a scene, one of the many videos or films that are on Jesus. Here we can see Jesus upright talking to Pilate. So how does John portray Jesus? But first and foremost, no one can read this story, not only the whole Gospel of John, but especially here, even during the Passion, without seeing the sheer majesty. Wow, what a man, what a king. There is no sense that he is on trial. When a man faces Jesus who is on trial, it is the man. Pilate may have treated many Jewish things with arrogant contempt, but he did not so treat Jesus. We cannot help feeling that it's Jesus who is in control, and Pilate who is bewildered and floundering in a situation which he cannot. You would understand this comment, though, if you have read extra biblical sources on Pilate, like the writings of Josephus. If we see him, he's ruthless. But here, Pilate seems tamed, bewildered, as we said. And the majesty of Jesus never shone more radiantly than in the hour when he was on trial before men. You would see this throughout the Passion narrative. Jesus was on the cross. 3 of the words of the 7 last words come from John, the famous woman, behold your mother. And then 2, where you see Jesus and the man, I thirst, and they give him something to drink. And then after that, it is finished. And then he breathed forth his spirit. It's as if he was really on command. Now, another thing that we can say about this is that Jesus speaks with utter directness to us of his kingdom. It is not, he says, of this earth. And the atmosphere in Jerusalem is always explosive, even to this day. During Passover, so it was dynamite. And the Romans well knew that. And during the Passover time, they always drafted extra troops into Jerusalem, much like how it happens here. When there are rallies, there are always police who are deployed. But Pilate never at any time had more than 3,000 men under his command. And some would be in Caesarea, his headquarters. Some would be on garrison duty in the area. So already there are men under him who are in different places. Now, there cannot really have been more than a few hundred on duty in Jerusalem. If Jesus had wished to raise the standard of rebellion and to fight it out, he could have done it easily enough. But he makes it very clear that his kingdom is not based on force, but it's a kingdom in the hearts of. He would never deny that he aimed at conquest, but it was the conquest of love. And Jesus tells us why he came into the world. He came to witness truth. And this is what the last part of the gospel is all about, truth. It's a kingdom of truth. He came to tell men about the truth about God, the truth about themselves, and the truth about life. Ralph Waldo Emerson would say, when half gods go, the gods arrive. The days of guessing and gropings and half-truths were gone. Jesus came to tell men the truth. That is one of the great reasons why we either accept or refuse Christ. There's no halfway. There's not a halfway house about truth. A man either accepts it or rejects it. And Christ is the truth. Dear friends, In a few months' time, the Philippines will be electing leaders of the nation. You hear a lot of news about those who would be running for office. Question, will they be king? We do take care that our positions, maybe, yeah, for this president, okay, and then senator, local officials, congressmen, of course, and then those for the local government units, and so on. And during when those who run the villages, the barangays, we do take care that these positions are not absolute, that they do not become autocratic, that they are autonomous, independent, and independent from other forces. But we are careful, pray that they are not independent from God. Why? Because there is always an authority higher than ours. We see to it that we or our leadership truly represent our group, community's decision, working for the common good and the power of God. God and not of human beings. And we should not be so arrogant. We should not be so holding on to power. It is not given to us. When we hold on to power by hook or by crook, we become abusive and we're prone to violate. When we look at the kingship of Jesus, it is far from that. When we think about the kingship of Jesus, it is something that is beyond us. Dear friends, I'd like to end with this reflection from Father Maloney. And he says, in this part, when Pilate entered the praetorium, Pilate will have none of Jewish stories or kings and messiahs. He would have none of that. Okay? But, he is told of the nature of Jesus's kingship. He exercises his royalty in making God known to the world. Because that is what Jesus came for in his prayer for those who are close to disciples. He was there to make God known, and that these would also make God known. And so his bearing witness to the world, drawing all those who are in the truth into his kingdom. Now, when we look at the reading, though Pilate questions Jesus about his royal status, Jesus does not speak himself. He speaks not of the king, but of the kingdom. There is a gratuitous offer of truth from Jesus to his Roman interrogator. He tells Pilate that he reveals the truth and draws the people of the truth into a kingdom of truth. They hear his voice. The term kingdom in Greek is basileia. And this basileia has been used on only one other occasion in the story. And what is that? Nicodemus was told of the need to be born again from above by water and the Spirit in order to enter the kingdom. And then this time now, they talk about that kingdom is a place where God reigns. The kingdom is a community. Those who are of God, of the truth, respond to the voice of Jesus and enter into that kingdom. May this feast of Christ the King remind us that Jesus is indeed our King, that he leads us to his kingdom. Let's pray that truth always triumph and that the kingdom of Jesus, the kingdom of God, will always come. God bless us all.